Hello, my name is Dr. Lawrence W. Moore of the Wayfarer Project. I am a composer and multimedia artist who specializes in synthesis and sound design for electroacoustic music for various forms of media. This is a new series that I've developed. Basically, for the past several months, I've been utilizing the software VCV Rack, which is a Eurorack modeling software. I've been utilizing it for composing music, creating many a tutorial, and as well as creating sound experiments for relaxation, meditation, and sleep. And as I will be continuing to compose utilizing the software for the foreseeable future, I've decided I would make a new series that contains my VCV Rack Patches. So hence Wayfarer VCV Rack Patches, as I release my music under the artist name Wayfarer, an old band name from the 90s that's coming back here in the mid-2020s. So anyway, folks, this first episode is inspired by a channel audience member that's been here for several months now. Mati Mateo requested that I do something on an auto-generated piece in VCV Rack. And I have composed a piece entitled Determined by Whom that has 3 parts to it, 3 movements that I composed as an auto-generative piece, basically a piece where as soon as you open the patch, it's playing and it'll keep playing. Basically, keep growing, evolving, changing. There's some motives that reoccur, but they don't come back the same way. They continually morph and change over time. And so you basically have a living, breathing, unfolding piece over time. There's 3 different parts because there's 3 different aesthetics that I explored in the work. But this was composed in VCV Rack 1. So VCV Rack 2, the current version, will not open VCV Rack 1 projects or patches. So I will eventually be transferring that over to VCV Rack 2. But I decided, let me work on something new. So in a couple days, here's an idea, a musical idea that I think I would like to incorporate in some of my upcoming music as an element. But this is auto-generative. It basically uses particle noise that's pitched. It has a semi-random pitch selection, and you can control the thickness of texture as well as the spread of the pitches and timbre. And I think it's a pretty cool sound. So after the theme, we'll check it out. Okay, so here we are. This is an example patch that I made, but we're going to build one together after this that basically is very similar. I don't know that each setting will be exactly the same, but they'll be close enough. Anyway, let me turn up the volume here so you can hear it. Okay, so you can see there, or hear there, that this is kind of like an ambient, delicate piece. A lot of qualities from, maybe like the modernist movement in the 20th century and electronic music, or maybe a little postmodernism, I don't know. Basically, some interesting stuff here. So I'm going to show you how to make this patch, and let me know what you think of it in the comment section. Okay, so let me just open up a new patch here. Now, since this is episode 1 in a new series, I know some of you that are listening are folks that have followed me for past few months now or something like that, but I want to introduce any new people to the setup that I'll be using, and I'll be using a setup that you've seen probably in my sound design for relaxation, meditation, and sleep series. Basically my mixer setup. And so in this first episode, I'll explain it again because this is a new series. And anyone have questions about it, let me know in the comment section. This is an interactive series. I answer questions. Any constructive comments are welcome. So anyway, that is a Mind Meld 8-channel mixer that I just called up there. And then I'm going to call up its aux expander. We'll take a look at it, and if you're not familiar with it, I will explain a few things here. First of all, we need to grab this and do this. Basically, Mind Meld has an 8-channel mixer and a 16-channel mixer right here, and they each have their own aux expanders for them. The aux expander is a right side expander, which means it needs to be right up against the mixer on the right side for both this version and the 16-channel version. And basically what it gives you is aux sends for them, A, B, C, and D, for each of your 8 channels, as well as for group 1 and group 2. On the 8-channel mixer, you have 2 subgroups that eventually go to the master out, but you have 2 subgroups that you can have different channels going to either one, or the channels can be going straight to the master as is the default. But these have their own aux sends as well as the individual channels. I also like to use the expander for this, that is the parametric EQ. This becomes a good visualizer of the audio spectrum for episodes like this that tend to be tutorials. A lot of times it's nice to be able to look at the frequency spectrum, and there might be some times that you want to alter it. And so this is a parametric EQ that you can hook up to the mixer like this from channel 1 through 8. This becomes a polyphonic cable that hooks up here, and now channels 1 through 8 has this EQ in line. And using this dial, you can call up any of the channels that you want, 1 through 8. There is also 9 through 16 on here. This can be used with the 16-channel mixer. Or if you're using the 8-channel mixer like I am, you're just using channels 1 through 8. And if you want, you can also use the group and aux insert outs to go into here. And then you can return all of these insert outs right here. Wait a minute, nope, right here, 1 through 8. And then the group and auxes. Basically, you can EQ group channels and aux channels as well. This handles 1 through 8, 9 through 16, and the groups and auxes. And it'll handle them whether they're mono or stereo inputs. Basically, this is an insert, send, and return that is in line with the channel. You come in here with the audio input on the left or left and right channels, and it will go through here and then return and go through the rest of the channel strip, the fader, mute, solo, and then it'll go to the groups that you select or straight to the master if you don't select one. These auxes are basically in line as well. You can set them to be pre-fader or post-fader. If you right-click in space on the mixer, let me keep trying there. There we go. When you right-click in space on the mixer, there is an aux send sub-menu that I'm looking for. Here it is. And that's where you can select pre-fader, post-fader. It's not individualized per channel, but you can set overall whether in general the auxes are before the fader section or after. And there's also a selection for being after the mute and solo section as well. I like to use this as my overall mixer setup. And then I also like to use a compressor from Squinky Labs. The MindMeld mixer stuff here and the Squinky Labs compressor basically are both free modules. They're all free modules that I'll be using in this episode. And basically, we can hook those up like that. Well, they're not hooked up. Basically, they are from a different brand, but they work just great with the MindMeld stuff. Basically, we can come in here and go out from here into the parametric EQ. And we could do the same with the group and auxes. Since I'm using the 8-channel mixer, there'll only be 2 group sets of channels there. Since the groups are stereo, basically here on this Squinky Labs compressor, the groups that I sent in here are going to come in on 1 and 2, and then the auxes will come in on 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 and 8 aren't used. But if we were using the 16-channel mixer that has 4 groups, then we could use 1, 2, 3, 4 for the 4 groups, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 for the 4 auxes. Basically, these work just great in line with here. If you're using a channel as a mono over here, there are 16 data streams on channels 1 through 8 going through this polyphonic cable, and it basically adjusts to whether you have a mono or stereo channel, but it all associates it as one, whether it's mono or stereo. Same thing with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. The channel number can be a mono or stereo, and it will internally basically send it as a stereo pair or a single mono to these numbers. So the numbering is still 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, even though beneath the surface there's really 16 data streams for each, overall there, because there's 2 per in case you're using stereo. But you don't see that here for channels 1 through 8. I can select on the knob whether I want to see compression for channels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whether they're mono or stereo. The same settings will be applied to either the mono or stereo channel. And then over here, groups 1 and 2, and then the aux heads are on 3, 4, 5, 6, basically. Alrighty. So that's basically the setup that I will be using as pretty much a standard. I may use the 16-channel version, but I like to use these as just something here because usually I'm doing things that need multiple channels, and I just like also to have the display here so we could see some things in the frequency spectrum, and I also like to have a compressor here just in case I need to, compress the dynamic range of a sound or something. So now I'm going to call it Reverb 2 from Surge XT, and I'm going to hook that up to aux A. Basically, here's your aux sends. And then we have our aux returns. Right here. So now this is set up as, oops, I use red for audio. That's my color coding. Okay. There we go. There's our aux sends and returns hooked up. So we now have this reverb on, and then we are going to hook up our master out from the mixer to the audio out here. There we go. And then I might as well put the effect that I want on here. A preset that I really dig is called Now That's Echo. Those of you who've been following my other series probably notice I really like that. Okay, so now let's get on with this auto-generated sound. We're going to be using the heart of the sound, the Audible Instruments Macro Oscillator 2. And the thing about this macro oscillator is if you right-click on it, you can select its modes. And basically, this macro oscillator can do a variety of different sound types. And you need to select a sound type in order to work on different sound types. But a lot of times you may not notice just from the surface. And this can do a lot more than what happens when you just plug it in and use what you see here. Basically, all these knobs will have different functions depending on the sound type you select. We're going to do particle noise right there. And I'm going to hook this up, audio out, to left, mono in. And there's some particles of noise being thrown at us there. These particles can be affected by the frequency knob. I do recommend hearing this episode, or really any episode in this series, on headphones or a good set of speakers. Built-in speaker on a cell phone or a laptop, depending, may not do things justice. So that's a recommendation there. Now, the names of these knobs aren't always going to line up with what they do depending on the sound type you select. And that is certainly true for particle sound. Here, timbre is really almost like particles per second. If I turn it towards the right, you basically hear more and more of the presence of the noise coming through. And basically, it's just a thicker cloud of particles. And if you lower it, it could be 1, 2, or 3 per second. But it is varied. It is somewhat randomized, which is cool. And then we have here harmonics, which is kind of like a thickness of pitch range. Right now we're hearing kind of like a pitch area, not really pitch. It's like somewhat filtered noise. When I turned that up, you heard a wider spread. High snaps and low puffs. Turn it to the left, and it becomes basically a concentrated pitch area based on your frequency knob. So this isn't really harmonics, it's like a pitch spread on this sound. And then if we go here to morph, it's a variety of things. If you turn it towards the left, it's like particles hitting a thunder sheet, you know. And then it sounds like, you know, you get less and less of the reflection as you turn this up, but you can still hear some reflection here. And then you turn it up, and it becomes pitched. And then more sustained as you turn it up all the way. Shorter instances of pitch here. All right, so I find them to be really beautiful, and so I thought, what can I do to work with this a bit? And I like to use like the LFO from, well, it's a set of 4 LFOs from Surge XT. These are all free modules that I'm using here. So there's no barrier to getting these modules. And for example, I could use this to, like, I want to vary a range of this morph setting. And I want it to be a really slow variation. So a number that I like to use for slowness is like 0.07. But I don't want it to be a regular sine wave of changing morph back and forth at 0.07 times per second. I mean, it's slow, but it could eventually be kind of perceived as a very regular thing. So I like to vary that. So I'm going to basically take the output of this third LFO here to modulate this one so that its speed or its rate basically changes. I'm going to say 0.043. How about that? And the way I can have it modulated is hit the mod button, and then up here, if I left click and drag up, you see this little line that it's made here? That's the region it will modulate it between. So every 0.043 times per second, it will do a complete cycle up and down this region here, varying 0.07 cycles per second, which is what gets sent over here for morph. Now nothing's really happening because morph is set to not be affected yet. But what I'm going to do is turn it to about here, where we do have pitch, and then I'll set it to be going higher than that by, see, it's going the other way there. Turn it all the way up. So now it's sustained pitch and shortened pitch. Maybe if I turn this a little bit left, it'll go between this and somewhere around here is where I really want it to go between. So this is like an attenuator controlling the range. Okay, good. So it's varying between the short pitched particles and the long sustained pitched particles. That's the variation that I want. And it's doing that roughly 0.07 times per second. All right, good. But not always at the same rate because it's being varied here. Okay, now let's see here. What other parameter do I want to oscillate? Now this is stuff that is going to be a regular oscillation back and forth. Not exactly regular because I do have variation here. I have an LFO varying an LFO. But it is going from range to another smoothly, and it's not jumping around. That's also, I think, something that I will do with the timbre here, which is not timbre. It's really the thickness of the number of particles is the better way of putting it. Particles per second. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do 0.07. Except this one I'll vary by, instead of 0.034, well, I mean 0.043, this one I will vary by 0.034. Those of you who've been following my other series, yeah, those are magic numbers that I like. And let's give it a little range of variation here. There we go. Now, we haven't adjusted the attenuator here, so it's not doing anything yet. But like here, I basically don't want it to be a thick cloud. I want it to go between here. And let's say this will hopefully be enough to get me to right about up here. There we go. Now this sound is pretty low, so I'm going to go to, we're on channel 1 here. I'm going to go over here, turn off bypass, turn down the threshold to about there where I see it coming in and compressing now and then turn up the level on it. There we go. Better signal. Now I am going to use, for another parameter here, random from VCV. And what this does is this gives me a random value out of one of the outputs here. These outputs vary based on how it proceeds from one value to another. In this case, I'm going to use the smooth output, so it smoothly goes from one value to another. Although linear is an option. But in any case, what am I going to vary? The harmonics, which is the that's the harmonic knob, but it's really the spread in this case. Like how wide of a range of pitches does it go through? So this one doesn't have an attenuator, so if I hook it up, it's already going. Now, this is the rate at which a random value is selected. I'm going to slow this down and put it like every 10 seconds. 0.1. That basically means every 100 milliseconds. Or 0.1 seconds. Every 1/10 of a second. And then I'm going to slow things, change down a bit more by putting this probability to 50%, where it's a 50% chance whether a new value will come every 10 seconds or not. Its range, I'm going to leave that all the way up, and the shape I'm not going to change. I'll let it be the shapes, the full shape that comes out here. So now our harmonics yeah, we're hearing higher and lower pitches. Yeah, that was a low one there. Yeah, some of those pitches you wouldn't hear unless you had good speakers or headphones. Okay. Now I can use this randomizer to do another thing, because I decided when I was at this point in this development of the sound, I want it to be able to turn off the sound and back on like phrases, so it's not just continually going without any space. So I called up the FACO ADSR, which runs on a trigger. My trigger color is blue. Turn it on trigger here, because it can do trigger or gate. Now, when I hook this up, we're going to hear the sound go away at first for a while, because we have more settings to make. So put it on the volume input there on the mixer. There we go. Now what I'm going to do is set the attack time to be instantly, basically quick. And then turn the release time almost all the way up. It's about there. But it's going to vary. Here's the input. The release time is going to vary based on what's generated over here. I'll have it select that based on step. Basically, as soon as a new value comes out, it'll go in here. But it also needs to trigger it. That's why I have the trigger set up. So this envelope opens up, and the release time, which is, since it is based on a trigger, there is no sustain time. So basically, I just wanted to set the release based on a value that comes up here, and that value comes up at the same time that it triggers the envelope to actually do something. Now, we're not hearing anything. We just got a random generated value there. Saw it flash yellow. And The envelope is closed. Who knows? Actually, before, instead of step, I had it on exponential curve. That works better. I'm not sure why. You think stepwise would just mean the value would be sent. Here it would basically be an exponential curve rise or descent to the value. So you could literally have 10 seconds or even maybe 20 seconds or longer where there's space. Whether this should be 10 seconds or not, I don't know. That could vary. That could change. Maybe I should put this probability on 75%. Because basically, we want to hear it not spend too long on just being closed. There we go. Okay. So we definitely got more space in there. And what I'm also going to do is send this to the reverb. Okay, cool stuff. Now, I'm going to have another set of these. What I'm going to do is set this to a different pitch level overall with the frequency knob. Turn it all the way up. And hook up the gate out. And the audio. May have to wait a bit here. There we go. There it is. But I'm going to turn this up. The reverb helps provide a little more sustain to carry out over some of the empty spaces a bit more. I think I am going to increase the rate at which a new random value is selected. How about 0.2? There we go. Now what I'm going to do is use another one of these 4 LFO sets from Surge XT. We're going to do although we don't have to do this way. Let's do this. I'm going to call up the attenuverter from Bifaco. And no, yeah, let's use a separate LFO set for this. Basically, I want panning. Let's set you up the same way I did the others. I'm going to use my magic numbers again. .07 on 2 and 4, and the first one's 0.034, and this one's 0.043. Now this does have, okay, all right. So let's hook you up to this one, which will be for channel 1. I'll put the varying oscillator in a moment, but let's get the range set right for panning. Basically, we could set you to offset of center, and this should pan it a comfortable amount to left and right. There's right. And there's left. And we can modulate it. Actually, to be honest with you, I should switch these. Kind of like first one here should be top here, second one here should be bottom here. So yeah, let me switch them. But this then would be channel 2. But I'm going to set this to the same range. They're both going to be oscillating between the same range, except they're going to be offset because their variation is different. I did set a range for you, right? There we go. There. There we go. And set you over here. Definitely a headphone listen. This is actually the third version of this that I made. I'm going to save it as well. But there you go. Hopefully that gives folks some insights. I'm going to play around with things a little bit more. And probably what I'm going to do is do one where I can control like the mode or the pitch selection a bit more. I gotta remember where I'm saving this to. There we go. Except this will be version C. There we go. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. If you have any other constructive things to say, please leave them in the comment section. Shout outs are always welcome. Helps me keep from feeling lonely, and it helps these videos get disseminated further on YouTube. So until next time, take care and stay spacey.